Hey, what's happening? Before we jump into the show, I wanted to see if you had any music on a hard drive. You have a band, you have a project, and you want to self-release your own music. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and go get your music up on all the streamers. You keep 100% of your royalties, and you can get 30% off by using this code. It's a great, easy way to get your music up on the streamers and share it with your fans, your friends, your family, your mom, your dog, everybody. Everyone wants to hear it. But go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, HYPHENATE, and send me the link. I want to hear it too. Send your mom the link. Send your dog the link. They all want to hear it too.
An amazing all ages punk club next to like an amazing dive gay Latino bar. It's like just stare at me right here.
What's happening, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is our show for Thursday, March 13th. March flying by. I know that's what you tune in here for. To get updates on how the months are going. I'm really excited on today's show to welcome my very good friend, Mr. Allen Bleyle. I've known Allen for a bunch of years, and super talented multi-instrumentalist, musician, and just a very sweet, supportive, nice friend. And we recently reconnected at a Devin Williams show, former podcast guest, Devin Williams. Allen is often a collaborator, a musician in Devin's larger band here in Los Angeles. And it was really fun just getting to catch up. And I think it was one of those moments of like, wow, we've known each other for so long. Wait, you remember this? Do you remember that? You know, doing one of those kind of things. And I was like, oh, you got to come on the podcast. This would be fun to talk about. And Devin, obviously, you know, super talented musician, can play anything, incredible songwriter. He's also an educator and has worked in kind of the kids' education space and nutrition space for a number of years. And so I thought, it was like, oh, yeah, this is totally a Hyphenate episode right here. So it was fun catching up with him. Yeah, hope everybody's doing well out there in the world. I just feel like, yeah, so much going on. It's really hard. I mean, I really think a lot about, you know, how do I use this podcast? It's, I realize I turn to podcasts a lot for distractions. You know, I like listening to stuff when I'm driving in the car, when I'm washing dishes, folding laundry, just booping and bopping around the world, around my little world, maybe not the greater world so much, but sometimes those podcasts are fun if you're a world traveler. I've done that from time or two. I usually fall asleep. There are some podcasts I realize that I do like to fall asleep to, and I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean sometimes maybe it's a mastering setting or some kind of like tone, just I don't know what you like to fall asleep to. I know some people have like white noise machines or like rain sounds or jungle sounds or ocean sounds. I think it comes from when I was a kid, you know, falling asleep with the TV on. Definitely had a TV in my room, probably somewhere around like the fifth grade, but definitely by fifth grade, had like a little black and white TV kind of inherited from someone in the family. You know, it was a tiny, maybe 6-inch, 7-inch black and white TV, and then got upgraded to like a 12-inch full color TV so I could watch The Simpsons. And I definitely would fall asleep a lot with the TV just kind of on, and then at some point you wake up and then go turn it off and then fall back asleep. And I think I do the same thing now with podcasts or YouTube. So something about YouTube that's easy to fall asleep to, because it's like they're talking, but it's not, you don't see everything they're doing. You kind of, your brain sort of like, oh yeah, right. I've been watching a lot of Spider-Man YouTube clips or not clips, but like Spider-Man breakdown. I get kind of nerdy, I think, when left to my own interests, and find, you know, I love like the breakdown shows or the kind of like what did this all mean? Here's the 10 Easter eggs, or here's the 20 best. What was the last one I think I just watched? Was like the 20 most comic accurate characters in the new Spider-Man, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man cartoon show. We watched that as a family, and it was a lot of fun. It's actually really good. I've fun. I've developed this dad sort of parent film rating scale, where it's like there's a lot of media, a lot of cartoons, a lot of songs and things that you've probably heard me complain here in the past, but a lot of stuff you put up with, but then there's like stuff that kind of goes, oh, this is actually watchable. This is not mind-rottingly horrible or just inane. And there's stuff that's like, oh, okay, I could do this. But I think my critical bar is probably lowered so much from just years and years of odd moments of media consumption with the family in general. And I just feel like, okay, that was a story that had characters. It was actually kind of funny. It didn't insult the intelligence of the audience. Like, okay, this is, I can watch this. This is a very watchable show. So I've developed an appreciation for children's programming or family television programming of that kind of nature. So anyway, recommendation, if you got young superhero fans in your family, that Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man show, not too shabby. Past Buster. And then I can go down a whole other rabbit hole of which ones are the most comically accurate. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I hope everyone out there is doing good, hanging in there, finding some relief, some distraction from just onslaught of insanity in the world, whatever recession, depression, market collapse is happening at the time, or shilling that has become the new political sort of discourse. I'm doing my best to hang in there, but also just keep it very local, keep it very localized. Sometimes even just into our own family. I know that is a privilege that not everyone is able to experience. So I'm appreciative of that. I'm aware of that, but just getting through day by day. This is not the world I envisioned raising children in this kind of political climate, and this just horrendous fascistic dictatorship. However, this is the case. This is where we are, and I'm trying to meet reality as it is, and not live in denial, but also find positive ways forward and positive ways of being a father and a parent. And I'm sure other people are in that way too. If you have any advice, any resources that work for you, please write in. You can find me at on Gmail, hyphenate@gmail.com. You can also find me on the Instagram at Randy S. Randall, where I post almost exclusively the tile artwork for these podcasts, and every once in a while some clips, some video pulls from the past guests as well. I am excited to share my chat with Allen, and keep sending in your band names. I want to review more band names. I want to review more stuff. You can also go, always go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. That's the preferred thing for everyone to do. I also got an update yesterday from Hugh Loverick from Scared Little Toaster. They have a new single that is out now. Maybe I'll play it here at the end of this one. Why not? It'd be fun. Or I'll do it on Sundays. So I'll do it on the halftime. New single out April 25th. No decaf. Set against a backdrop of jagged, mathy rhythms and chaotic, noisy riffs, encapsulates the intense frustration and confusion of encountering disappointment, whether it be a lukewarm, decaffeinated beverage or a burnt slice of toast. Oh, so British. I love it. Nothing's more disappointing like a burnt slice of toast. No Decaf by Scared Little Toaster coming out April 25th. I'll play it on the halftime show this weekend. Farley and I usually catch up over the weekend and record those then. But today is Thursday, going into the weekend. I hope everyone's going to stay dry if you were in Southern California, or stay warm in whatever part of the world you were in, or stay cool if you're in some sub-Saharan warm part of the world. And I will see you on Monday. Allen, thank you so much for joining on Hyphenate. It's a pleasure to see you. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, you as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite.
Of course. Yeah, we recently played a show together here in Los Angeles, and I was like, "Why haven't you been on?" We've known each other for, I don't know, I feel like almost 20 years now.
Yeah, it's one of those amorphous, definitely hovering around 20 years, and then the gray, it gets gray.
We get gray.
We get gray. I mean, even a 2-year like history, I'm like, how did we meet? So when it goes 20 years, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, well, I remember meeting you. I want to get back into our production talk, but we were just talking before the mics were ready. But we were talking about production, but the music production stuff. But I remember you coming to our house. So I was the renter of a fun back house. It was a 1-bedroom apartment above a garage off of Melrose and La Brea in Hollywood. I had a friend who first got it, and I moved in there in 99, and then the friend moved out, and then I held on to it for about 10 years. And we would have parties. We built a skate ramp there. It was this kind of like all around thing. And then it didn't really go. I mean, I went to college for 4 years, kind of living there and being a nerd and going to shows, but mostly I just, came home and did homework. But then as I was finishing school, I met Dean Spunt, and we would form bands. And then I think he was the much more social person. And once he lived there, once he moved in, then it was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I think even before he lived there, I think he was already like, we should throw a party at your house. They had a big front yard.
Yeah.
So I think you came over to a party there. I think that's when I first remember meeting you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense because I definitely, I had recently moved to LA. I don't know, in 2002. And then I met Dean at like a Iraq war, I think it was, protest on bike. I had my bike, and he was one of the few people on a bike with a few other friends on bikes, and I was all about bikes then. And I was like, who are you these bike punks? They live. LA's got them. And then we just connected, and then I remember pretty quickly coming over to that apartment.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you were you were working in or volunteering at like the bike kitchen. I remember the bike I had was just kind of my road bike from high school, and you helped me paint the frame. I remember talking to Dean about it. He's like, you should really talk to Allen. He's really got a good eye for painting. So I think I went over to your house and we just took everything apart and spray painted it. Probably right or something.
Yeah, sounds right.
Design thing. Like I didn't know what to do. I was just going to paint the whole thing. And he's like, no, you were like, you got to take the components off. You got to take the things off. It'll look better this way. And I'm like,
I only knew how to DIY it. I've never painted with real paint. In one of those cool boxes where you put your hands in, like a science.
Oh, right.
That's how they do it when they use the fancy, totally chemical paint of death.
That's wild. Or powder coating, and you can do all kinds
powder
of
coating.
Things.
Yeah.
Those are early memories. And you lived at a place way up on the top of a hill in Silver Lake. I remember trying to bike to your house or to or from your house, and you were at the very top of one of the gnarlier hills, not Baxter, but like on the other south of Sunset, whatever.
No, I never lived. You might be thinking of that like cinder block house. What was that? The F house. Oh, I never lived there.
No, that was an Echo Park.
Yeah.
No, this was
I lived in Tularosa.
But it was like kind of behind.
It's behind the 99-cent store.
What? Yeah, I want to say like south of. This is good for everybody to know. This is
this is great.
This is just us.
Great content.
But it was it was like in Silver Lake, like south of Sunset, and like those kind of almost like but before Hoover, between Hoover and like Melrose.
It was south of the 99-cent store, like south going up that Maltman Hill, and then
that
over
was a hill. Well, because maybe that was a hill. For me, it was a hill.
If you came from the north, you were going over a hill. Okay. You're right. That was a gnarly hill on a bike on a fixed gear or whatever.
Yeah, I never had a fixed gear. I was always single speed freewheel. I never
well, same deal.
Yeah, it was hard though. It was a hard thing to go. Like we were just like, okay, I'm just gonna walk my bike. This is no fun anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was not afraid to do that.
No, not at all.
But we'll do the proper. Oh, but getting back to we'll just put the pin in our music production talk. The demo-itis. You said you fall in love with the performance or like the string clicks or the little bumps and warbles in the voice and stuff. And that's just performance. You know what I mean? If you feel like that was your best performance, no matter what the quality of the recording is, whether it's like a answering machine tape or something, if you feel that's the performance, then who's going to tell you no? You know what I mean? That's if that's what you wanted to capture, like sound quality be damned.
True.
You know,
it's true, and I definitely do like hold on to that notion of performance with recording. Like even if I'll do comping or whatever, I will do that somewhat, but I like to try and like get a take that's from start to finish. Like And then those takes will have those artifacts of like, oh, the guitar, just kind of has this harmonic thing that like you listen to it 5 times and then you're waiting for it. And then the thing is, if you do it again, if you do like a version 2, you're going to have the new special things that come out, but you just have to trust that you're going to be excited about them and let go of the original ones. Right. Like that's kind of where I fall flat. I'm like, I don't need to go round 2. Let's just stick with round 1.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing a bunch of producing and helping friends with recordings and stuff. I have a little bit of a studio here at the house, and I'm so on the side of the artist. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's good for production or for whatever, who else is out there, but my main feeling is I always want the artist to feel like whatever's in their head is coming out of the speakers. Cause that's all I ever wanted. Like, I didn't want somebody to impose their aesthetic on me, or I wanted them to give me options and say, well, if you want, but mostly try to understand that inarticulate thing, especially for younger artists, where it's like, I just, I love getting references. Like, what's a reference mix you like? What are the things? And then go and then really listen to them and look at them. Like, okay, well, the way they did this was X, Y, Z. I feel like I've put enough time and energy and effort and made enough mistakes, mostly, to know like, oh, to get that sound, you can go about it these ways. And,
that's cool.
And just show them the options. Like, there's no right or wrong. Like, if you're looking for that sound, here's a way to do that, but you're going to give up the ability to mix it later or something, like, here's your pro cons. And as an artist, I feel like that's their choice to make. You know what I mean? My job as a producer is just kind of guide them through some of the technical stuff that you might otherwise feel intimidated or just feel uncreative about, because there's a lot of technical stuff in getting records made. And I've experienced so many of those different types of personalities that are imposing, and you're just like, I don't want to be here now. I don't like this. I don't like this record. No matter what I do, no matter what I sing or however it gets captured, it's been tainted by this experience of recording, and I hate it.
Yeah. By like an external top-down vision coming from someone else. Yeah. I mean, it is just the dynamic between the people. Like, because I think that one of the reasons to work with a producer or an engineer or anyone at all nowadays, because it's so easy to kind of do it yourself, is to have another opinion, to have someone that can kind of like show you possibilities that maybe you didn't think of. But if that's done in a collaborative or in the non-condescending way, it's just like options that you're presented. They're like, oh, cool, that is true. But if it feels like it's just like, this is actually how it's done, and we're going to move it in this direction, and you're like, but what about, I don't know, I don't think so. It doesn't feel right to me, That doesn't.
It's such an intimate sort of moment of like just trust between people, and I think when you're starting out too, it's just translating it. But I've also encountered, like a lot of younger musicians grow up with GarageBand, and so there's so much of a language of like DIY sort of engineering, and like.
Exactly.
A lot of that stuff is just those decisions are made for you. Between that and economics, like, oh, this is what I could afford. This is the microphone I could afford. This is the thing. And also I think we have so much more like just general internet knowledge, of YouTube troubleshooting, and like, what microphone did Kurt Cobain use? Okay, cool. Then you can buy a replica or a version of that, or the latest production model of a 58 or 57, okay, cool. Now here I am. Whereas I think back in our days, there was I remember when I first got a 57, I paid $100 for it. It was like the most expensive piece of equipment I had, was having this Shure SM57 mic, which is kind of standard. It's like saying you have a pencil, but it was important.
And I feel like they still cost $100, which is kind of amazing.
It's incredible. I love it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the best thing to do. But yeah, there's just so many letters and so many numbers and so many things that like, oh, are you running that through a 1176? You're going to put this through, come from a 1073 into an 1176. Yeah. Mix out an SSL.
I mean,
it's too much.
True.
It's confusing.
I'm kind of proud of myself that it took me so long to become a gearhead. Like, I really just had one guitar and like one condenser mic and one 57 and one whatever for like till I was like in my late 20s or something. I was like, I really kind of waited a while to like explode out. And then once you do, whether it's with like music gear or like whatever you're into, it just you go from having 1 to 2 to 30. It's just like it's like exponential, and then you're just down the rabbit hole and everything's crazy.
Yeah. Well, there has to be a little bit of income, disposable income to throw at stuff. Any hobby requires a certain bankroll that you can that reflects the gear you have. And even if the most it's like it's everything costs money, and that's
and you have to have somewhere to put it.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's go back biographically. Where did you come
Yeah.
from, and how we talked about how we first met in LA, but
Right.
where do you come from originally?
Well, I was born in the beautiful Buckeye state of Ohio, but yeah, my dad was in the Navy. We kind of moved. My family moved around a bit, so I only was there for 2 years, and then we moved to Connecticut, and I was there through most of my childhood. And then starting high school, we moved to New Hampshire. So I went to high school in New Hampshire, and that's where I kind of feel like I'm from, because like I lived there from 14 on, and I really connected with people there because it was kind of going from this sort of like stuffy, like kind of like suburban Connecticut world to like this sort of more like back to the land, like hippie kind
Crunchy
of northern New
granola.
England
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, and like the kids like had cool parents that were like they actually had relationships with them, and they could tell them that they were drinking or that they weren't going to come home that night because or, they just were honest with each other, and it was just a different vibe I wasn't used to. And it was kind of eye opening, and I really, yeah, I just fell in love with the area too, just the nature and I don't know, just the culture of like less to do, and the kids were more creative because of it. I met a lot of friends I'm still friends with there in Vermont, New Hampshire area, and yeah, and then I ended up I went to Spain for a year, studied some Spanish. Spanish was like the only thing that I really cared about in school, and I convinced my family to let me study Spanish abroad instead of going to college, basically, for a year. But then I ended up going to Evergreen, which is what brought me to the West Coast. That's in Olympia, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I had some connections there. I have an older sister who's in music,
Yeah.
and so I visited the Northwest quite a bit.
Well, tell me about. I mean, yeah, tell me about
Yeah,
her. I mean, obviously
yeah,
she's a celebrity in her own right.
exactly. Yeah, Jody. She was in Team Dresch, which are playing again, so they're
Mm-hmm.
around now, and then also Hazel. So two bands. Like Team Dresch was like a queer, like all woman, like queer punk lesbian band from Portland in like the '90s. Um, and yeah, she was living out there. She's 10 years older than me, so like a big difference. She was really like a big sister that I looked up to and helped me got me exposed to so much, especially in the music world, and got me my first guitar when I was 10, which I still have. And um, yeah, I would go out and visit her when I was, young. Like, because let's say she moved there to go to college. She was there like when I was 8, I would go visit her for like a week and just hang around or whatever. Um, but yeah, so I had been exposed to the Northwest and the music there, and um, just also was looking for somewhere kind of more alternative to go to school. Like I was always kind of struggling with school, but I did want to go to college, so I ended up going to Evergreen. I lasted a year, I dropped out and just played in bands up there and hung out there for 3 years, three and a
So
half
this was
years.
the late '90s in
This was,
Olympia,
yeah,
Washington, which is still
late '90s Olympia, Washington.
a huge creative boom. That's sort of that
It was a
post
good
Riot
time.
Girl,
Yeah.
stuff. But still, there's a lot. So much going on and so many bands. Calvin, K Records,
Calvin
and
K
yeah.
Records. That was right when the gossip was starting.
Mm.
That was when like I don't know, C Average was playing a lot. Like that was like the end of Unwound. So I saw the last Unwound show at Thekla, which was great. Yeah, the scene was totally happening. I think, and it is again. I hear that Olympia's got a lot of cool music going on right now.
I know people have told me they played the Voyeur, and I was like, oh wow! I remember we played there our first
still
tour.
there.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's still there, and it's the same. They supposedly. I haven't been to Olympia in like 5 years, but
yeah, we played there. We played the backstage of the theater, the Olympia Theater. Gosh, I don't know what that was. 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah, the Capitol Theater.
It was fun. Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's a great place.
Yeah, I mean the whole city just feels like ghosts though too. I mean there's so much
right
there. You know what I mean? It's such a small town packed with so many kind of indie rock and just sort of creative, explosions everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Feels empowering.
Yeah, it's true. No, Olympia is a really special place for how small it is and how much music culture and just alternative culture that thrives there and comes through it. it's a really special kind of place, and it's cool because it's so like that's the thing. I went from Olympia to LA, and it was like it took me a minute to kind of get kind of accept LA because everything felt so fragmented. It's such a big city that all the scenes can kind of
Very
like
different.
be independent of each other, and there's not necessarily a lot of overlap. But there doesn't need to be. Like it's like I'm into metal, I'm into whatever, and like people are just like in their own bubbles. Whereas Olympia, it's just so small that like it's all the same. It's just all one thing. It's all music, you know.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like there's like wolves in the throne room right there, being crazy black metal heshers, but they're like going to like the Calvin show, and then it's just like everything's just a big pile.
Well, it's like like going to a small high school where it's like the metalheads and the ravers and the and whatever the the stoners and the punks.
Yeah,
it's all you're all sort of the part of the same crew. It's not
right.
Yeah, versus
and
LA where you can have your own. There's a club night every different night, or every there's a whole different club on the other side of town for each one of these kind of music scenes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I think that there's a lot of pretension in Olympia, I'm sure, and it probably can feel really cliquey to people, but it's that thing where if you are like inside it, you don't realize that necessarily, and you're just like, wow, it feels so supportive. It's very, very supportive feeling. Mm-hmm. If you're active in the scene or whatever. So yeah, I think that coming to LA, I was like, it was a vibe shift. But then I found the right people, and then I sort of found that kind of scene and the smell and stuff, and it felt very similar, But
sorry, I'm gonna go on a tangent just for a second. I think I've told this story before here on the pod, but if not, it's one of those funny, sort of 18, 19-year-old adventures. I finished my first year of college in LA, and I was living in that little apartment, and my roommate was touring or was going out, he was doing his own thing. And I remember I didn't have a band, but I had a 4-track machine I was making all kinds of experimental music on and doing different stuff and trying to do different things. But before the week before I went back to my second year in college, I packed up my car and I had like an acoustic guitar and a backpack. And I was like, my plan was to drive up to Olympia and record a record. But I didn't have any music. I didn't have anything, but I was just going to go to Olympia and just like hang out and play guitar and then like be part of the scene. I just needed, I was getting so frustrated with Los Angeles and my kind of like my transition from my small town suburbs in Southern California into the bigger LA thing, not really finding, I was skateboarding, I was playing music, but I didn't know what I was doing. But I thought if I moved to Olympia, if I just go to Olympia, somehow my life will just be different. It'll just be changed. To have this kind of like Wizard of Oz sort of pull. And I got as far as San Francisco. I got to San Francisco and I stopped and I got a sandwich and kind of just walked around Haight-Ashbury a little bit, which kind of has another sort of pull or something. I went to like a skate shop, went to Deluxe, and then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going to stay tonight. I don't have a plan. I've never toured. I've never really done this, and I'm by myself. But I'd gone to like Music Plus or with CD Traders or one of these places, and I got like Modest Mouse CD, the Makeup, the Fugazi. It was all bands I knew, but I was like, I'm just gonna like just kind of like drenched myself in this drive of like just listening to whatever contemporary modern music was that I could get a hold of, and it was like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to be the next person I want to be. And I got to San Francisco and I didn't know what to do. And my roommate had a sister that lived in Tiburon up in Marin, and so I called on the payphone. And he's like, "Yeah, you probably could stay with her, because I'd stayed with her once before." And so I stayed the night there, and I woke up the next morning. I was like, I'm going back home. I don't know. I don't have this figured out. I don't have my shit together. I don't know what I think was going to happen, but this is real, and I don't have any money. I couldn't really even afford the gas.
Yeah, for sure.
The reality but I think I went for on a walk. I went on a big hike and just kind of thought a lot about life. And I was like, okay, I'm not there. I'm like 18 or 19. And
you weren't quite prepared.
No, I wasn't. Yeah, I just hadn't earned it yet. But I was. But so I went home and then just threw myself back into school. Like, this is where I'm at. This is the choices. This is the path I'm on. Finish this thing. But I was so ready to do that. And the first time that Dean and I's first band went up to Olympia and we stayed at the Red House and slept on the floor, like I cried. And I think I that's the first time I ever told anybody that story. I was like, this is all I ever wanted to do, was to be in Olympia playing. And we played in the basement to like 2 people. And then, Joey Cassio and the crew, whoever was living there at the time, were nice enough to just say, yeah, you just sleep on the floor here. And it was just everything. I just couldn't believe it. The smell, everything, just the whole vibe of all of it. It's like, this is where I wanted to be. This is what I wanted.
The mildew.
The vision I had, the mildew on everything. the
Yeah.
dirt,
Yeah.
the communal living
Yeah.
in a house and
It's
drinking
slugs. Yeah.
Oli beers, just
Right.
cracking beers on the porch and everything. I was just like, this was what I wanted. This was the vision I had in my head 4 years
Yeah,
before.
totally.
Maybe it was only 2 years before, but it took me 2 years to kind of get to that place. And it was like, if I did nothing else in music, if the rest of my life went very differently, but I had done that one thing, that would have been a full circle moment for me and like my own like projection of what I wanted to accomplish. That's as far as I could imagine doing in music.
Totally.
I was going to Olympia and playing guitar and hanging out. That was it. So it was so great that you had that, but you went the other way. You were coming from Olympia down to LA, where I was trying to go that way, but I didn't know how to do it and couldn't interfere.
Yeah, but I also I had the same draw to Olympia. I just had the in to use it to go to school first, and like But it's amazing how it had that, or had that draw, that like sense, that it was that place, or it still is that place for so many people. It just stands out.
Yeah, I mean, going to like the Dumpster Values, or what was the thrift store there, or the vintage store, and like just everywhere you went, it just felt like wow, this was a real like college town, or a real like different place. I don't know. It just had this it was populated by people that were like, these are the people I want to be friends with. This is the community I think about, and like, where is this community in my life?
I mean, yeah, it's so much more than a college town, because it has that college that brings people in, but all that culture that you're describing is created by people that are way older than college age, that are either from there or continue living there. People stick there and create culture there, and like it's not just a transient place for everyone, that comes through it. So
yeah,
it was so cheap,
inherent.
One of the reasons why. But because the whole Northwest, you have to, it's almost hard to remember now, but it wasn't long ago where like the whole Northwest, including Seattle, and was just, just a lumber, real kind of like not sophisticated
Twin Peaks
place
sort of thing.
Yeah. Twin Peaksy, like kind of like relatively poor and just low industry, and like just kind of woodsy place with just rock and roll roots. And it was affordable to live, and you could, hang out in the basements all winter long and be an alcoholic and make music, So,
I think that's what I was looking for. I couldn't wait. So why LA? Why'd you want to come to LA? I guess that's the long way.
Well, yeah, LA. So I was from the Northeast, and I lived in the Northwest, and back then, at least, especially in my circles, like LA had a lot of stigma to it. People always like talk shit about LA because it's like, plastic and cars and all that crap. So I always just sort of fell into that. I never really thought about LA, but I came to LA the first time with my band. I was in a band called USA Sexual in Olympia, and we came down and we played Mr. T's, and it was awesome. And I just had it was just a great show. I had a great time. It was part of a thing called Scudderfest, which this guy from LA, Rudy Blue, used to do. It was like a queer, like a music festival that was around his zine that he had. And we played with Pansy Division, and it was just like a lot of fun. Met cool people. And Olympia, was like, had a lot of like lesbians, but almost no like gay boys. So I was just like there's some life out there, I was like 21 or whatever. So LA just kind of like became sort of like, ooh, okay. Like I had fun. That's fun. And then I came down maybe a year later. I was in this hardcore band called Necktie Party, and we played like an amazing show at the Smell. That was the first time I ever went to the Smell. We played with Fast Forward.
Okay.
And Kundo was just had a crate of like 6 dozen eggs, and was like just throwing them at everyone. And I was like, whoa. And it was a great fun show. And then I happened to just go next door to the Jalisco bar, which is like a gay bar right next to the Smell. And I was like, I'm in heaven. It's like, this is like my favorite place on the planet I've ever found. Like an amazing all ages punk club next to like an amazing dive gay Latino bar. It's like just bury me right here. So then I was like, okay, LA is unlike anywhere I've ever been. And so then, but I was still living in Olympia. And then my sister, Jody from Team Dress, she had moved to LA within like around then. She like after she wasn't living there when I was on those tours, but she moved there a little bit later. And she basically called me one day. I remember getting the call. I was at work at a restaurant in Olympia where I was working. And I answered. I guess I didn't have a cell phone, but somehow I remember talking to her on the phone there, which is crazy. But maybe I'm making that up. But anyway, and she was like, "Hey Al, I have this idea. Do you want to let's come to LA and we'll start a band and we'll go on tour like for 7 weeks." She basically got asked to do a tour with this woman, Katie Davidson, who has a band called Dear Nora. And Katie asked her to like go on a tour with her, just do like it kind of be like an acoustic thing. Like there was like, Jody, play some acoustic songs. And Jody's like, sounds fun, but I don't want to do acoustic songs. Like I'd rather have a band, but I don't have a band. So maybe my brother we can start a band, because we've always talked about playing music together, but the age difference it never kind of worked. But by then I was like 21 or 22. She was 32. It was like we were old enough to kind of be adults together. And I was like, I wasn't doing anything major in Olympia. I was like, I could flip the table and come to LA at least for like a few months. So I was like, fuck it, let's do it. So I moved. I didn't move, but I came on a long trip to LA. I stayed with Jody, and we just wood chopped. Like we just got a practice space and wrote a set of like 7 songs in like maybe 3 weeks or something, and then we just went on the road for 7 weeks, like a huge US tour. And it was just fun. And then I came back to LA at the end of that with the plan of moving back to Olympia. And I was kind of like, well, I don't really want to move back to Olympia. So I just kind of went back and figured out my stuff. And I drove down here with my cat, and just ended up here, and then we kind of kept the band going for a little bit, and I just but it didn't last. Called? That band was called Family Outing.
Okay, I remember.
Yeah, Family Outing is like a lost to the ether. We don't have any recordings. We have like recordings that were never released, but we never like, we were just a live band, really. Like we never got it together. But Family Outing lives on because it's a family band, and now Jody has 2 kids, and they're both amazing musicians. One's a drummer, one's a singer. So like there's been different iterations of Family Outing through the years, and we just jammed recently with Lucian on drums, and like anything could happen, but the band's definitely like always ripe to reassert itself,
That's exciting.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah.
And then so you're in LA, and you're what happens next?
I'm in LA. Man, what happens next?
Well, I guess I want to build up into the idea, of Apple Brain and sort of this career you've developed as like a child, sort of educator and musician, but sort of talking about all the roots and kind of where you come from. But I mean, how do you sort of like get to that?
How do I get to that? So I mean, in LA, I continued playing music. I didn't have my own band outside of Family Outing. At that point, I was like, just kind of just playing in random bands, playing with friends, I played a lot with my friend Devin.
Oh, yeah.
And we were touring a lot. Like we probably toured twice a year for a few years there. And so that I was always just holding down like, dead end jobs so I could quit and go on tour type of, what we all did.
Yeah. Well, I remember, because I was playing, I mean, the first time I ever really played solo, and again, it was that sort of fulfilling sort of this like Olympia sort of dream, was I think we played at the A House, there on Rampart in like Beverly, and you played solo, Devin played solo, and I played solo. It was all just kind of acoustic guitars. And by that point, I'd already kind of gotten involved in like sort of the noisy, sort of whatever punk sort of stuff from The Smell. But I always had this like, had this part of my heart that was like, I love, Mountain Goats. I love Ben Lee and Bob Dylan. I had this whole kind of folky sort of thing that never really sort of found its way into whatever we were doing up until that point. I think there's shades of it that would come through with finger picking and weird sort of like folk chord stuff that in the no age milieu of music and soup of stuff that we would do. But it felt very like other side. Like I loved fast, hard music. I always loved like really soft music too. And so it was
Right.
that first time I ever got asked to play. And I remember, you know, you and Devin had these really beautiful songs. Like, I want to be part of this. How do I be part of this world? And so we would jam, and then
Yeah,
we
I
would play
remember
in
that.
Devin's. Yeah, we'd play in Devin's band because he sort of had songs together. And I was like, okay, this is just easier to play, learn his songs, those chord voicings and things, and to try to come up with my own thing. And it was fun. And then at some point I remember I was teaching, I was becoming a substitute teacher. And then he was like, okay, well the tour is like tomorrow. And I was like, well, you didn't tell me the tour is tomorrow. And then he was mad at me. And I remember like, why are you mad? You can't be mad at me because you never told me. I'm not bailing on you. You just never told me we were leaving for a week or whatever it was. So I couldn't go. And it was like, sorry. So I felt bad. I felt like there was like a schism there, or there was a break in our friendship there to some degree. But it was in a lot of ways I was like, I'm pretty sure it's on you. Like all good, you know, just misunderstandings or disagreements. The other person thinks that one's wrong.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I can easily imagine that happening.
You'd book a tour and not tell the band until the last minute. And like, okay,
dude, we went on the first tour together only, and I was playing drums. Like I played bass with Devin for the most part, but I was playing drums. Well, I mean, there's lots of eras, but like the first tour we played drums, and we like flew to the East Coast. It like started on the East Coast. We only practiced once, and we just went for it. It was, you know,
some of the most like drunkest symbolic sort of shows I ever played was with Devin and you. I remember the Silver Lake Lounge. It was like, we can't go on. Like we are fucking wasted. It's like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Let's just go play a show. Like
it was probably our downfall, because that's how Devin and I, especially back then, like we were a dynamic duo of like bad decisions, you know, like being like, should we do this bad thing? And then the other one would be like, yeah, let's do it. Like egging you on to like say yes to the devil. You know, like I remember so much like, should I roll this? Should I treat this beer bottle like a bowling pin and roll it down the empty floor of this open stage we're playing in like Austin, Texas? Like, do it. Like, it's a good idea. It's being young and stupid. Yeah. I mean, Devin's great for that. Like, but no, it is a good point. The Apple Rain stuff, because it does remind me, because it's like, how did it all work? I was playing, when you mention the acoustic stuff, that's what I was doing, a lot of solo stuff. You know, I put out a bunch of self-made records under this name Sphenator, which was just like my like name for my solo life. And those songs were like acoustic guitar, and they were very like kind of like childish and like lyric driven and like simple and playful, and or like beautiful and sad, whatever, but the gamut. But I was doing that a lot in Olympia and then in LA, and then I was living at that house, the A house, and I had a roommate named Matt Resigno, and he was a nutrition educator. He was like a health educator. He had a master's in nutrition, and he basically one day was like, hey, my job, we're looking for like ways to diversify our education curriculum around nutrition. And like one of the ideas that we pitched in one of our like blue sky meetings was like, what about music? And they're like, maybe we could have a way to involve music in these like curriculum with like young kids. They're going to Head Starts and like elementary schools and doing little like, they called them interventions. They're just like 20-minute kind of like, oh, hey, like the nutrition people are here and they're going to do a little thing for 20 minutes. And then they're going to go to the next classroom and do a little thing for 20 minutes. And they were, so he basically pitched to me. He's like, hey, my boss is really open. She's pretty cool. Like we've talked about adding music into our curriculum. Like you should come down and like interview with her and see if you can work with us and do music for kids, because he had heard me play my Sphenator stuff, which is kind of like sort of silly, and like he saw that I might be a good fit, and I was like, that sounds cool. So I did, and then I just got this. She was like, I just made up a song about apples. I was like, okay, well, I don't have. What am I gonna do? So I just like sat there and like made up a little song, and I went and I played it for her, and she was like, her first boss. She was like, let's do this. So then suddenly I had this job, going in front of like 25-year-olds and doing little shows. And it was great, because it just forced me in the hot seat to like get experience with children's music directly, like with kids in front of you, so you can like really test out what works, what doesn't work. Um, and it was short too. I would only have to do like 2 songs and then move on to the next class. So I was like, it was kind of like a great training ground. And I did that, and I wrote, like a bunch of songs that way. And then I gave myself the name Apple Brains. And I'd always loved fruit, so like it always kind of like was this weird thing that worked out. Like I had this weird obsession with fruit just as an adult, and then I could transition it into this like meaningful, thing with a purpose towards kids, like, oh, fruit, nutrition, education. And so I just just stuck with it, and I ended up recording those songs and making an album, and like started to get on kind of like the children's music circuit, like, because which you would think is like tiny or whatever, because you don't necessarily know about it. And then I like started to get my foot in the door. I was like, oh, this world is like bigger than the indie rock world. Like, this is a crazy world.
It's almost invisible to people without children, but once you have children, you're just like, oh, I'm in it now. You're
like, there's Raffi and there's Dan Zanes or whatever, but then you're like, no, there's like 500 other people.
Yeah. This was sort of pre-YouTube, but now like the proliferation of kids YouTube and stuff, it's just exponentially insane.
Yeah. But it was great, like it was the type of thing where you end up getting a ton of invites for like, hey, do this for free, like play the Eagle Rock Street Festival or play the Sunset whatever festival, like a lot of festivals for no money, just for exposure. But really fun shows, and I did a lot of shows at schools. So it went from being like me with an acoustic guitar in a room with the kids to being more like rock shows. I had like a full band and would go to do like the Christmas concert, or do different like events, like when schools would have like the fair, where there's like some sort of fair in the blacktop, with different vendors. Like there'd be a stage at the end, and we would play.
And there's a budget associated with
these things.
There's a
budget, and we would make some money, and did some traveling with it too. Like went up to Sacramento a few times and played some festival things there. There's like a Kindy Music Fest in Brooklyn. That's like the big one. We played there. So yeah, just I don't know. That's how that happened, really. Yeah.
And is that something you're still doing? And that's how does that work?
I do it very infrequently. It's not a moneymaker for me anymore.
I see.
I do birthday parties sometimes. I don't have a band together. It's kind of back full circle just to me and the acoustic guitar. I haven't done like a full band show in a while.
But there could be a behind the music of Apple Brain, the rise and fall. There's probably 15-year-olds out there and 17-year-olds who are just like, whoa, I was raised by Apple Brain.
Oh yeah, and we did some music videos. Like we have some music videos. One music video was like someone that was a teacher that was a fan from a school in Oakland, who's like, hey, I love your stuff. I'm coming down. We're doing like a field trip down to LA with my class, and we would love to like meet you or do a show with you or do something. And I was like, well, why don't we make a music video? And so we made a music video with those kids. I think they were maybe third graders at the time. And that's for a song called Fruit Confusion Blues. All this is on YouTube, whatever. But it's cool because now those kids are, a lot. I don't know what year this was. This maybe was 2010 or something. So now those kids, are in their 20s, and I've been reached out to like, hey, I remember that was cool, like you're Apple Brains, whatever. So it does come full circle because the kids, they grow up, and then they're they have these like those like childlike memories of like, who was that crazy guy with the apple on his head, So yeah. And what's cool about children's music too is it's like evergreen, like I can always like, I mean, the music stylistically is maybe like you could say it's not super contemporary. Like it's not like drum machines and like, it's not like super like tricked out, like high production, like a modern music. It's more like Sesame Street kind of style. Like you like light rock kind of stuff. But so to me, it's kind of evergreen. It's relatively timeless. So like, it's always fresh, and the content matter is just about fruits and vegetables. So it's just like, it's fairly fresh to any new kids coming up. And like,
Yeah.
you know, my demographics really like 1 to about 6. Once you're like 6 or 7, you're like a little too cool and you just want to listen to Katy Perry or whatever. But like before that, you know, kids are fans.
You could get into anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Did you ever see, James Taylor on Sesame Street? Have you seen those clips?
No.
It's incredible. He does 2 songs, and we had a DVD, you know, when our oldest was real little, and we'd, oh my God. Yeah, I'll see if I can send you a clip. It was just beautiful, but they were just part of our child's having experience, being new parents, you know, for the first time with a 2-year-old and watching old Sesame Streets, and the music of Sesame Street, obviously, you know, is so crucial. But it's so funny that our second was just immediately fell into whatever the oldest was doing. Like he bypassed Sesame Street and got right into like video games, Roblox and Minecraft.
Oh,
because older brother was already into that. So I was like, what about Grover? Like, no, I don't want to watch Grover. Yeah. I'm like, oh no. So we only got that chance as parents to only really go through that once. And I think, you know, and so much of that experience too is like, you know, it's new for us. And we're, you know, and you're just afraid and excited about everything that happens with your kid. Like, is this good for them to listen to? Is it not good? And so you remember all those moments.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I can see the big kid being such an influence that the little kid's like, we're going to skip all that boring baby stuff.
Well, yeah, we had no idea what it was going to be like having a second. You know, you think you're going to go through all the same stuff again, but it's a whole different experience. And he's a different kid, and they're all different. You know, everything's different.
Everyone's personality is different. Yeah.
But just the experience, because ours grew up with just looking at the 2 of us. You're the first one, and then the second one's like, well, I'm not looking at you guys. I'm looking at this guy. This brother. He's the one to copy. He's my role model. I'm not going to look at you parents, guys. Yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah.
It's a whole different way of doing it. Well, and what are you doing now? Where do we find you now?
Well, with Apple Brains, one thing I'll say with Apple Brains is when the pandemic hit, I'd always had this little pet project dream of like this totally tangential Apple Brains album that I wanted to make, that had nothing to do with fruit. It was about dogs, because I would always catch myself writing songs for my dog spontaneously, and I had like these voice memos of all these little jingles that I would sing to like the dog, you know, about whatever, like going for a walk, whatever. And like I just had them all, and I thought they were really good. And so at some point I just started to like put them through the studio, like just basically sit down and be like, oh, here's this jingle. I'm going to sit down for 2 hours and just record it, you know, give it drums, give it whatever. Just try and make a polished little song out of it, but keep it short, keep it like 30 seconds. So I just that was kind of like what I would do musically when I was sort of like, wanted to work on some music, but you know, whatever. So I went through and I basically built out like 30 of these little dog things, and I just had them hanging around, and I always had this vision of like, I want to do this weird dog jingle concept album. But when the pandemic hit, I was like, I just had the time and the motivation. I was like, okay, here we go. So I made that album. So it's called Dog Radio, and the songs are like thematically stitched together through like turning a radio dial, and it kind of takes place on like another planet, and it's like sort of like this sci-fi concept album. But I'm happy with how it came out, and it's like total ADHD, like roller coaster ride of insanity, because there's 30 songs in like 22 minutes or something. And it's just online, you know, as an Apple Brains release on Spotify and all that stuff, but it's a fun listen. So especially I think it probably gears a little towards a little bit older kids. Like this was never like workshopped in front of kids. This is like, it's a kid's album only because I have the vehicle to like be like, let's just throw it under that bucket, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, kids do like it. And I think maybe more like 6-7-year-olds, you know?
Fun.
But that's like the last thing I did with Apple Brains. And I've done some performances of it too, like more like karaoke style, where I'll do the track. I have a dog suit, and I'll like basically perform the album, because it's only like a 20-minute album. So it's like one set. I can perform the album as a dog. I've done that twice. And that's the last crazy tangent of Apple Brains. But,
it's funny you bring up your dog. I remember No Age played your backyard as a benefit for you.
Oh yeah, for a benefit dog. For Zucchini, yeah. And yeah, exactly. And she was the origin of a lot of those songs, you know?
It's incredible. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause that was kind of at the height of when people gave a shit what we were doing. And it was, I think
Right.
we kind of created a little bit of a stir in the backyard
Yeah.
when we
Oh,
played,
yeah.
but it was the first time we had played one of the songs off of our third record, and it was like I think it was one of those. I'll always remember that song and associated with that backyard benefit party thing, because it was like Gene and I had written it. And we're like, is this going to work? Does you never know if that stuff's going, but we were sort of under pressure of being a touring band at the time that people were expecting stuff from. Like it became a band that we were just doing for ourselves, and then we started to feel that there was an expectation that we owed somebody something, whether it was an audience or a record label or something. We started to have, we had investors, or we had people who were invested in whatever it is we were going to do next. And so we'd written this song. I think it was the song "Come On Stamung," and it was the single off the third record. It was a thing, it was kind of and we didn't know, but we played it in your backyard, and everyone went crazy. It was fun. So I think that was the validation of like, oh fuck, okay, we have another song that's going to work. Okay. But we never know until you do it, but we also didn't want to play it on because the next show we had was probably a festival somewhere in Europe.
Right.
So it's like, you don't know if the song works or not, but you don't want to like biff it in front of a lot of people. So we figured like, well, let's play it in the backyard and see if it works. That was the first time we ever played it live, and it went over well. And then we're like, okay, so we continued to play that song. But it could have gone the opposite way. If everybody at the party, if it was like a record scratch and everyone was like, fuck this sucks. What's this new thing these guys are doing? We would have not played that song.
Bring us. So, we only want to hear the old stuff.
That would happen eventually. That we would get to that point. That would, but we were able to get one more record out of that cycle of stuff.
Totally.
Because it worked. But I always associate whenever I've played that song on tour and different, I don't know if this happens to you when you're performing a song, but there'll often be, not always when you write it, but there'll be some one key memory keyed in with each song. And that whenever we performed that song, I always thought of your backyard.
Think of the backyard. That's cool.
So
that's cool.
When I think of you and dogs, I hadn't thought about that in a while when you were talking about, with your dogs, like, oh, right.
Yeah, so, exactly. I know it was a long journey getting that. I was impressed with myself that I saw it through, because I was like, this is one of those ideas that you have that you don't see through, like,
oh, of course,
I'm gonna make this, but like somehow the pandemic graced me with the opportunity.
The time.
I just jumped at it.
That's cool.
I'm sure there's a lot of copyright violations on it, but we don't talk about that.
Because of samples? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because of samples of like the radio sounds. Yeah.
I feel like so much of that stuff now, the thing I've learned, or as time goes on, people only give a shit if it makes them money. If you're not making money at stuff, I feel like you could basically sample whatever the fuck you want to do. You know what I mean? There's like fair use laws, and especially if it's not a giant hit, if there's no money, the only time it's ever illegal to sample something is when you make a lot of money off of it. If you're not making money from it, just sample whatever you want.
Sample whatever. Yeah.
No one's going after you. Lawyers aren't looking for you.
Yeah, no, this is not going to be an issue. I mean, I think it's one of the things only like AI would be able to to identify, because it's not, there's no sampled music. It's just sampled like radio static stuff from the internet.
Yeah, but that stuff got to be fair usage if it's coming through. Well, we'd always get that like on the plugs if they weren't grounded. Usually get Mexican radio coming through, like that would happen. I love getting that on a recording or something, like as the last notes fading out, then like something coming in after. Yeah,
sure. I should have used that.
Yeah.
But nowadays with music I'm like a jack of all trades dabbler still. I have my foot in a few different projects. Like I don't know if you ever did you ever listen to the band Longstocking?
No.
That was an LA band from the late 90s that put out a record on Chainsaw Records, which is like a queer punk label that did the Team Dresch records and did like the early Slater Kinney records and a bunch, did the Need and stuff. That is my friend Tamala's band, and I wasn't in the band originally, but the band just kind of reformed to do some reunion shows at these 30th anniversary Team Dresch shows that happened in Portland. So, and Tamala asked me to drum for that. So and the songs are like really good and really hard. They're very well crafted kind of pop grunge kind of songs with lots of parts and lots of dynamics. So it was really fun to learn that stuff. And it was so much work that we're like, well, we got to keep playing, because we can't just learn a 45-minute set just for these two songs. So now we're like thinking about seeing what happens. We're going to keep jamming and seeing if we want to make it, a contemporary band with new songs, write new songs, or at least do some shows, try and play some shows in LA and wherever, San Francisco and, West Coast stuff. So that's fun because it's like a fresh new group of people, and with some strong material and a lot of opportunity for writing and whatever. So I'm excited about that. And then I always am doing my own stuff. Like I made like an album under my own name. Finally, I just was like, fuck it, throw off all the, you're familiar. You just get rid of all the baggage, just use your name. And where I played everything, I'm kind of like the blessing and the curse of playing all like the standard rock and roll instruments is like, you can kind of tunnel and isolate, but as opposed to like collaborating. So I enjoy that. I enjoy just like being in my own little head and just like being able to like develop something alone. But I also, of course, enjoy working with other people. So I'm always kind of working on stuff. I did make a record and put a band together that we played a bunch of those songs. These are more like real, like actual rock songs, but then that sort of fell apart, the band a little bit. But I'm just like, I have issues with asking people to play my own music, so
it's hard.
It's hard, right?
Yeah.
But so yeah, I would like to start playing that stuff live again. But in the meantime, I'm like always just on the back burner, just kind of like slowly like developing new stuff and recording. I have thankfully a recording space in my house like you do, so I can kind of like do the full thing. And like it's just always, it just feels good to keep it going, regardless of whether I'm playing out or not. Just like just keep the music flame burning, with my own stuff,
Sure.
like but yeah, it's not what I'm doing professionally at all anymore. Like I'm, I make money like as a web developer, which is something I threw myself into like maybe like 8 years ago. I realized I was like a nerd more than I ever knew, and I kind of like noticed that I had the aptitude for it. Like I had the interest in like coding and like whatever. And I just basically threw myself into it after like sort of dabbling with teaching, and like kind of going from like the Apple Brain stuff, getting exposed into the classroom. And then I started to be a teaching assistant, and then like an English as a second language teacher. And then, but after like, maybe like 6 or 7 years of being in classrooms, I was kind of like, I think I'm ready for a change. I don't think this is where I'm happy. Like the behavior management aspect of it was always really hard for me. And so I just kind of I turned hard nerd and started coding and stuff. So yeah, that's my day job, and then yeah, like with the music stuff, just keeping it alive, like dabbling here and there. I played on our friend Kim Free's record.
Oh yeah.
And there's did a music video at the house, so
it's amazing.
Which will be fun, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, there's something nice too about kind of just detaching the music and the creative stuff from a monetary, sort of engine where you can really just do it for itself, and really there's something kind of, obviously, it's, and as we age and sort of mature with stuff too, it's like, oh yeah, this is the appropriate relationship I should have with my creativity. Like obviously honor it and engage in it, but not put so much pressure on it to where it's like suffocating or you're squishing it. It's like,
like you have to make that call at some point or whatever. Like, I mean, I could imagine like, being like, fuck it, like going all in, but right now it's not what I need to do. I don't. And like, as long as I keep the flame alive, it's the balance is there.
And the economics of music and playing music has significantly shifted in the last 20 years. I mean, with streaming, once everybody realized like, oh, okay, we can just give the music away, or once it was asked, like, or forced upon, bands like, nobody's going to pay for your music anymore. They're going to pay us, but they're not going to pay you. You're not going to get paid for your music anymore.
I know.
It changes it. Not that we were doing it for the money, but once that is taken off the table, and you just realize, oh, there is no money. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you really have to kind of consider your relationship with it in a lot of ways. That, it was unheard of or unthinkable as a kid growing up. Like, well, all these people have CDs and they have T-shirts and they go on tour and
Right.
sell tickets, and and
Right.
then so to see it just the change, so such a drastic change, you're like, okay, well, that means you can't really afford to be a mid-level band or a smaller
Right.
to middle band. It's just it's impossible to do.
It's impossible to do economically. Yeah.
Or when
but
an opening band still gets paid $100, which is what they got paid in 1985. They got paid $100 to open, and
right.
30 years later, 40 years later, it's the same price of like, yeah, I'll give you $100 to open the show. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Totally.
With the price,
but I do like
everything else.
I feel you probably get the question too, like in my life, like as always from extended family or just friends I haven't seen in a million years. One of the questions I always get is like, it's like when you're catching up, like, blah, blah, are you still playing music? Are you still making music? And I've just started to notice that question and value that I can say yes, because I think that, no judgment on anyone, but I just think that like as we age, we kind of like drop things from our lives, that we, even if we like it or whatever, it just becomes less a priority or there's less ability to make it fit in. And it just feels good to be like, oh yeah, to notice, when I answer that question, like, yeah, I am. Like that's something I do actually value and like keep going, even if it's just totally private, if it's just something that I do and I'm not like, it's not interfacing with the outside world, that part of it comes and goes, but like the actual just kind of like activity itself for my own well-being is like, very present. And that feels great,
Yeah, it was something I noticed, years ago. It was like, so there's some part of my sanity or my sort of like, emotional balance that's crucially tied into playing music, and and it has nothing to do with the audience or nothing to do with anyone else. It's really just my own. I think I've created it's a form of emotional regulation or something, or there's a catharsis to it, or even if I'm just sitting down playing something, like my brain, it's reactive in some way. That's calming, and that I think is kind of centering in some way. That's part of my emotional sort of chemical makeup in my brain, that it's like a necessity, and that's how people feel about it. And I'm sure people feel that way about sports or about, lots of things in their life, but I think music just sits in that place for me. So even if it's, when I say I play music, it's like, yes, I also drink water. I also, I also, brush my hair and brush my teeth, but I also play guitar and am fascinated with chords and want to do things in the same sort of way of like, I cook pancakes on the weekend,
exactly. I mean, I think people that gravitate towards find music when they're young, it probably, for most people, like, it definitely true for me. It is a core part of my emotional life. It's just, it is how I connect to emotions. It's how I process emotions. Like, it's just it's like the tool that I've found early on that connects me to an emotional self. And so like and if I go for a while without playing music, I start to feel less connected to that self. And then you're kind of like, wake up, you're like, whoa, wait a second. Like what happened, So it's like, it's,
I was talking with my wife, because she, when I first met her, she was playing keyboards in a band, and she's gone in and out of playing in bands and things, and she plays piano at the house, and she just went to see her old bandmate play at a show in Boyle Heights this last weekend at a new bar that had just opened up, and it was like a thing of, her friend was like, "Do you want to play? Do you want to come in?" And so she's like, "Well, first let me just go see you guys. Let me just go out on a Saturday night, and having two kids and being in our 40s it's just time is so different. You only have 24 hours in the day, and she came back and she's like, "I loved it. It was beautiful." And I was like, "Are you going to play? Are you going to do it?" And she's like, "I just don't know if I could do it." And also the heartbreak and the heartache of joining a band and falling in love with all your bandmates, and then it's like inevitably something goes wrong. Someone's rude or mean, or it just isn't, the timing doesn't work, and and you got to fall, and then you got to go, then you got to emotionally peel yourself out of this band that all your hopes and dreams and excitement levels were tied into, and then it doesn't work, and it's just a lot. It's a big roller coaster of all kinds of things to do, and so she's just like, "I don't know if I could do it at this point." I was like, I understand all of those things, it just makes sense,
and even if you're, I mean, even still, even when you love it, like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, it's still like, it's kind of like going to the gym. It's like, it's still a daily struggle to be like, yes, I want to go to band practice. Yes, I do. Instead of just being like, oh God, fucking band practice again. Like, oh, kill me. Like, even though once you're there and you do it, you're like so glad you did it. But
Oh my
it's
God.
that weird struggle, like, especially now more than before, like older, you're just like, I don't want to like leave the house on a Tuesday night, like to go to fucking band practice. Like, come on, but
Yeah.
it's always
Yeah.
worth it.
Oh yeah. No, I'm usually the other one letting everybody off the hook. Than the current project
Yeah.
I have, it's I'm the one like, hey, are we doing this? Like, kind of coaxing everybody out, but also offering nothing really in return. I'm like, I have sparkling water and a dog, and
exactly.
For Scotty, that's usually enough. He'll come over for band practice for a dog and some sparkling water.
And sparkling. I mean, those are his two like love languages. Yeah.
I could coax Scotty over with that, but the other members, it's like, I really got nothing to offer you. I don't know if and even if we do get a show, there's really no money at it, and it's really all just doing it for the love, and not that the band members don't love it, but at the same time, we're dealing with PTA meetings, and we're and like other band members have other things going on, and like so one of the kids has a cold, and well, I better not come because I don't want to get you sick, and then your kids get the cold, all these kind of fun things that just in your 20s there was really. And I think the other thing I was going to say too is just like there's a woodshedding sort of time frame of playing music where you would just have a guitar at all times, and you're just playing around with figures, and most of it sucks, but then one thing like a kernel will come out of playing the guitar for 4 hours. You'll have a 2-second riff that like, oh, that could build something off of, and you do that exponentially over months, weeks, years, and then you're like, oh, there's a song. But the amount of time and effort and energy it takes to just sort of like sit with the thing and trust it and throw it away and bring it back from the trash and chop it up and do it again and again, and just the time to sit and polish a thing that comes out, and just everyone goes, oh yeah, that sounds great, but the sweat equity and the elbow grease that goes into those kinds of things, it's not necessarily it's not conducive to a life, and if you have time and other responsibilities, or you're being expected to show up and be responsible for other people, it's hard to commit to those 4 hours. Like, oh, what are you doing? Like, I'm just dicking around. Maybe I'll get 2 seconds of something with this 4 hours. Like, well, I kind of need you to change diapers or take out the garbage, or you got to work, or you got to, even if someone else isn't telling it, you're telling yourself like, well, I should really be doing something else, or I should be getting sleep because I don't have enough sleep, or I should be working out, or I should be tending to friendships who have not spent enough time with my friends, but here I'm going to selfishly just spend 4 hours noodling on a Beatles riff that doesn't actually sound right, and you're in the wrong key and you're playing it wrong.
Dude.
But that's what so you're sacrificing that little bit of time of nurturing a seed of potentially a song that could go somewhere, or living a life, and you're like, at that point, like, come on, you gotta go with what feels healthy for you. No one needs to torture. We don't need to torture ourselves like that. We've spent the years and decades doing it.
And unfortunately, it literally can be torture. Those 4 hours or whatever, like when it's not quite working, but that there's a seed at the end of it. But you're like, but I call it like walking down into the basement and just like hanging out with the devil for like hours. Just like, you're willingly putting yourself into like a torturous experience to like know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but you have to just have faith, and you're like, oh God.
Or you record it all, and the worst part is you think it's worthless, and you go back and you listen to those 4 hours of noodling, and then it's like, oh, this is even worse. And then, but then you do find something. It's like going back through your vomit or something, like, oh wait, but wait, there was something good in here. And so it's double
going
torture
back
sometimes.
Through your vomit. Yeah.
But when you're a kid, and again, like you said, I like the way you put that about New Hampshire, where it's like there wasn't a lot of things to do, and creativity was a good way to kill time. I think that was a benefit we had. And again, culturally, I think we're just the value of boredom has been minimized. I think this boredom of life is something that's really important to remember and nurture in ourselves and others.
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend that just actually deleted Instagram this past weekend, like not Beautiful. Just like removed it from his phone, but he downloaded all his shit off of it, which you can do, I guess, deleted his account. I was like, I want to do that, but I'm not doing it, but I applaud you.
Yeah.
Like in the spirit of boredom, like
sure. Yeah. Oh, it's a great one. There's so many things that rob your boredom, that steal your that valuable, just being bored time, and picking up a book and just thumbing through a thing or something, Oh man. I mean, it's become a new obsession of mine of just, trying to nurture those moments. And it's harder to do than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And podcasts like this are another thing that's steal boredom. I'm constantly listening to
Dude.
podcasts and listening to things, and I get so much out of it. I love it. Yeah, the earbuds, I carry them around with me all the time. I just to have. I love having them, but at the same time,
Yeah.
that's probably keeping me from just counting the dots on the ceiling or whatever other things I would do.
Yeah. Writing lyrics, that's like,
Right? Oh, sure.
man,
Yeah.
that's what I used to do when I needed to do something, but I had nothing to do. Like I could use that time sometimes, sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
But now like never. And I have to like try and carve out time. Never happens.
Yeah. But it's good to think about. And I'm sure we're not the only ones. I mean, I'm sure there's people listening to this. Everybody, you heard it here. Turn this off, go practice guitar, go write lyrics, or not, or just keep listening and hang out and finish folding your laundry and finish walking your dog. Those are the things we do with podcasts in our heads. Yep. True. Well, Allen, this has been fantastic. I've taken up too much of your time. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, no, this has been great. Thank you.
Where do you want people to keep up with you and follow you if you want that at all?
Oh, well,
find out more about you and what you're up to.
Well, the music stuff, you can just look for Allen Bleyle or Apple Brains on all the stupid streaming platforms.
Yeah.
No, I don't use social media that much, but Fruity Al is my Instagram handle. Right. Fruity Al, one word. Yeah. Let's just leave it at that.
Leave it there. Okay, cool. Yeah. That sounds good. That's I always want to give people the opportunity or not to have to put that out there. Yeah. When you hear somebody like, do you want people to follow you? Like, not really. That feels creepy. Yeah. But they could if you're promoting things, if that's part of your business model, to have people know about what you're up to on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I mean, you won't get flooded. You want to post every 2 months.
Perfect. At Fruity Al on Instagram. That's the place to be. Awesome, Al. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Randy.
For sure. Yes, there he is, Mr. Allen Bleyle. Thank you so much, Allen, for coming on the show. Thanks for making the time to chop it up with me. And again, everyone, go follow Allen on Instagram. That feels like a tongue twister. Follow Allen on Instagram. His handle is @FruityAl, and there you can see updates on when he's playing shows and buy his record and see what else he has coming up in the future. Oh, the future. Oh, oh yes, the future. Follow me on wine. I appreciate everyone tuning in and listening. Remember, distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate to get your music up online. If that is what you're into, you can save some money. I think we get a kickback for that. And be well. Have a good weekend. Have fun. St. Patrick's Day coming up on Monday. If you celebrate that kind of thing, be safe. Don't puke green beer up everywhere. Or if you try to get in the toilet, you can. All right. Have fun building leprechaun traps all weekend. I think that's what we're doing here at our house. No green beer here for us. Thank you. All right. See you Monday with more updates on St. Patrick's Day.
Stuffy, kind of suburban Connecticut world to this sort of more back to the land, hippie kind of northern New England thing. Yeah. And the kids had cool parents that were they actually had relationships with them, and they could tell them that they were drinking or that they weren't going to come home that night because, they just were honest with each other. And it was just a different vibe I wasn't used to. And